Hi, today we're talking about Luminar AI from Skylum. Hi everyone, welcome back. My name is Daniel Allen. I'm a Seattle-based photographer and specializing in landscapes and portraiture and all things post-processing. And I got a really cool surprise in my inbox today announcing that Skylum had released a new version. Well, it hasn't released, it's announced a version of their Luminar software. So it was Luminar 4 previously, which I currently own. And the next version is going to be called Luminar AI. And AI is really kind of the buzz right now. Everybody wants to call everything AI, and there's, it stands for artificial intelligence, and applying some kind of computer-based logic around the different the ways that we process photos. So I thought we should maybe sit down and take a look at what they're announcing is going to be in the new version of Luminar AI, and just kind of give my opinions on my reaction on what I think of those things. So let's go ahead and take a look at the website here. So see lots of cool graphics everywhere, and the first image editor fully powered by artificial intelligence with Luminar AI, creating striking photos becomes surprisingly easy and fun. And let's take a look. They've got some like automated examples here of before and afters, and let's just kind of look at some of these. So here's one with a portrait, and we can see immediately that I think we have to go off of it and go back to it. So when we come off of it and go back, so it does look like they are adding smart masking. So if you have used Luminar 4 at all, you know that their sky replace technology is, and that's actually what this next one looks at here, is the sky replacement. But sky replacement technology will automatically mask out the sky for you so that you can replace it. And it looks like they've included that for portraits now as well, so that you can automatically mask out your subject. But what I'm seeing here is I'm seeing some haloing around the image, around around the portrait, and some of these areas, like I guess when you hover over it with your mouse, it goes back to before. There's some kind of weird body morphing going on there too. It looks like down by the waist area, they're tucking in her waist. So we do before and after. You can see that they're kind of tucking in her waist, kind of like what you would typically do with like liquify, which, that's okay. There's a lot of controversy around that. Some people think it's ethical, some people think it's not. Personally, I think I've mentioned this on previous videos that the idea is to get the image to the spirit of what it used to be when you were taking the photo. So if this subject didn't have a protruding midsection, and she was definitely more thin, then adjusting the photo to convey that might be entirely appropriate. I would be interested to find out how that is being handled. And it's interesting to me that this is a portrait in a studio versus like an environmental portrait, where there's a solid background. Now notice in this background there's not even any kind of wrinkles from the fabric or anything like that. It's all been taken out, if it even existed at all. Or maybe this is just paper. So that does make masking a little bit easier, but you can still see that there's some haloing around the subject. And then notice, I'm going to put my mouse over it so it's going to go away, but notice right here in this hand, there's this section that didn't get adjusted, or it looks like maybe it did, but not very well. Even still, it's quite impressive, frankly. I mean, just masking the hair alone can be really cumbersome. because of color fringing and so forth. So the fact that they've kind of automated some of this for us is quite remarkable. Although I don't know if what kind of effect is being applied, if the effect is just like an exposure, or if that's like a color fill, or I don't know what they're putting over it. I'm definitely not a fan of this whole little rainbow thing over here, and I think that is in existing in the Luminar software right now. There is so there's sky replacement, and then there is also AI augmented sky, I believe it's called. I haven't really used it much, just because it's basically instead of just replacing the sky, it's adding extra elements to the sky, which is really strange to me. So like putting hot air balloons or the moon or something like that. And I think that's probably what this is as well, is some kind of like just augmented composite rainbow thing that they've put on here. I mean, it's kind of cool, but you would never see this in real life. You would never see a studio shoot where there's like this little rainbow flare in front of the model. And if there was, you probably did something wrong during the shoot, right? So, I mean, not a fan of it. And I think that the selection is okay. I think that I think there needs to be some way. I mean, even in Photoshop, where that we've been masking things for, a better part of a decade now, where we've been masking and refining masks and, doing all of that sort of thing, masking by color or luminosity range or whatever the case may be. Masking gets very, very complex, and trying to tell the software what is part of the subject and what is not is incredibly difficult. So, there needs to be some way, I think, if they're going to be successful with this, where you can say, yes, this little part of the hand here is part of the background, not the subject, and have that included in the selection process. And if it's not, then, this, good effort, good try. Let's take a look at the next example. This is a landscape. And this is a lot more kind of what I'm used to seeing from Luminar, where they're just doing a lot of cool, like see the sky replacement here. And we find this a lot when we're doing landscape photography, right? Where it's like this drab, boring sky, because frankly, you don't want a bright sunny day when you're taking photos anyways, because unless you're doing black and white, then, that contrast can really be helpful. But, you want kind of cloudy and overcast and drab, but then, because then you get, less harsh shadows and highlights in your image. But of course, the downside is when you do that, then you have a boring sky. So a lot of times we're cropping the sky out. So this whole sky replacement that Luminar came out with, I love it. I mean, I really love it, and the way that it retones everything according to the elements that you put in the sky. I think that's a little bit more of what they're doing here. It's hard to say. I don't know what all they're doing to get the image to look this way. There even looks like there's some kind of warping going on. They're definitely adding some kind of sun rays coming out of the sky with the sun off camera. So if you see over here is where they're placing the sun for their sun flare. That's interesting too. The mountains have changed. I mean, everything's kind of changed. I don't know what they did here. That's very interesting. But it's a beautiful image. But at what point are we faking it as photographers? It would have been much more impressive if this image itself had been caught. And I gotta admit, I'm guilty of it too. I like doing a sky replacement because skies are boring half the times in the photos, and I can't capture the moment that I'm seeing in front of me and have an amazing sky, because that doesn't always happen. Amazing skies, 1 in a million that you see them. I mean, they happen a lot, but unfortunately I don't have my camera with me typically, and I'm definitely not set up like this, where there's a model here and a beautiful scenery, and there happens to be an amazing sky at the same time. Those kind of conditions are very, very rare. So, being able to augment our photos into something that, either we wish it had been or what our vision was. There's been photos I've done with, they were especially like day to night scenes. I spent the better part of a night outside of a lighthouse trying to get the right conditions so I could get a nighttime lighthouse shot. And in the end, I ended up having to take a daytime shot and converting it to nighttime just so I could get the image that I had in my head. So, there are cases for that, and I worry that something like this is just going to make people lazy and not really try and get the best photographs possible. But you still have to have things like good composition, being able to tell a story. You have to know how to, work your camera. If you've got a totally blown out image or it's blurry or whatever, then there's no amount of artificial intelligence anywhere that's going to be able to fix that. So let's look at the next one here. Very kind of traditional fixing of the face. It looks like they're fixing color tones, and they're also doing some morphing of the face too. They're kind of they're thinning the face, it looks like, lightening the eyes. Boy, I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of it. Number one, I think she looks like a whole different person. She doesn't have the same skin color at all. She's got more of a stylized kind of purple skin color to her, which kind of works, I guess. But I'm looking specifically at like the eyes and the turban on her head, and I just think it's just so far over the top. It just almost looks like a cartoon, really. Which, if that's your intent, then bravo, that's fantastic. I do think it's really cool that they were able to identify a face through the foreground foliage there, the grasses. Being able to detect those face elements like the mouth and eyes and nose. I mean, that's quite impressive. Just for the fact that you can do it. I think if it were me, I would, and I was using this software and I had gotten the photo to that stage, I'd probably apply like an opacity filter to it, the whole thing, and just pull back all of those changes just slightly because I think it's a little much. But that's me. I think it looks more like a cartoon really than a real photograph. This is really cool. I don't know what the science is behind that, but it's pretty darn neat. Again, they've done a sky replacement up in the sky up here, which, that's kind of one of their hallmarks. And they've done an overall color cast adjustment by the looks of it, and then the way that they've used that light to illuminate the subject. I can't quite tell if that is like just if that is any kind of like artificial intelligence applied to that, or if it's an across the board boost of everything. I can't quite tell, but it's quite nice. It's quite stylized and cool, which is I can definitely appreciate. One of my big gripes with their sky replacement images, especially ones that I bought from them, they can often be really grainy, and I shoot on a full frame camera, and so my images are quite large, and when I put them, when I do a sky replacement, a lot of times the sky looks speckled, and unfortunately if you go and try and add a blur, it does a super blur to it. So, I'm finding that if I have an image that I want to use, one of the skies out of the sky packs, I have to go and manually do some noise reduction on the image before it's even usable, which is unfortunate. And I hope they start getting some more really high quality skies that we can use and put into the photos, because I think that would, there's some that I bought that have been fantastic. They're just beautiful. They're definitely, you know, high resolution images, but boy, a lot of them are just garbage. And I don't think that's their fault. I think these are sold by third parties through them. I think that the photographers who take these sky photos are probably selling through the Luminar site, and I don't think Luminar is directly responsible for them, but they should have a little bit higher quality, I think, higher standards. So let's take a look at this one here. They are, let's see, unlock new possibilities. Want to get the sky any way you want. Select the weather you want. Naturally perfect details of your subject's face and body. Do all of it in seconds. And that's just some of the magic with Luminar AI. You'll enter a new world of creative possibilities. So if we look here, so it's another typical sky replacement, and I'm seeing the same problems I see in the current version of Luminar AI, where they're masking out subjects and so forth. Actually, you can see that there's a color bleed, a significant color bleed on her face. It doesn't look like, it looks, well, I can't tell if that was on purpose or if that's the sky. It doesn't look, maybe it's not the sky bleeding through onto her, but regardless, that's on her face, but it's not on her arms, which is interesting. So there's missing the end. It's definitely not on her feet. So we've got a pumpkin orange face. We've got kind of tannish arms, and then we've got purple feet. So not super impressed with that. And again, we're seeing the same sort of haloing around the outside of the subject like we have, like I have in other places. So it's still having issues. It seems to be mostly when you've got a single vertical subject in front of the sky. For whatever reason, their algorithm does not mask that very good. And that's me coming back to my earlier statement where, you know, it's going to require, there's going to have to be some way for humans to come in and say, no, this is part of the background. This is part of my subject, you know, include this, exclude that. There needs to be some way of doing that. And if you look at the screenshot down here on the body modifications as well, which, you know, I'm okay with. They make her look super petite, which is probably not the greatest things for our daughters to try to aspire to, but you know, that's okay. I mean, everybody, we all do it, so it's kind of what sells photos. But I would be curious to find out if it is just a general shrinking of everything on the subject, and how does it determine what the subject is? For example, you know, you might want to pinch in the waist, but not the hips. Some people like a little curvier hips. And, you know, if it's all done with real-time AI, you know, is it able to even tell that there's hips there? Or does it, you know, is it, I mean, she's at like a quarter turn away from the camera. Can the AI actually determine that and accurately know where the breasts are and the hips and the navel and the knees and all of that, and be able to adjust those correctly? Because it's probably easier when you're standing profile, or if you were straight on with the camera. But you know, anytime you're like a quarter or 3/4 turn, any kind of partial turn away from the camera, angles get funny. And you know, it's going to depend where horizon disappears to, the elevation of the camera versus the subject. I mean, there's all sorts of, you know, factors that go into how a body would shrink and so forth. So I suspect it's probably just overall. But here we go. Here's the first look at kind of what the UI is. And I'll tell you, this is actually a welcome change here. This is the sky replacement that I was telling you about. It's in the current Luminar 4. And it used to be just a drop-down box. Drop-down box. And I've got so many skies in there now that I have to scroll and scroll and scroll. And there's no way to preview anything. There's no way to see what any of the skies are. And so all you can do is just hope they're named properly. click on one, see if you like it, and then go back and switch to another one. But you've got to scroll again. You got to find out where, you lose your place constantly. It almost becomes too much of a headache to even bother with. Works great if there's only just a handful of skies, but once you've got, I've got like probably 3 dozen skies now, and that list gets really long. So I'm glad to see that they've got some kind of preview here so you can see what the sky looks like. And then looks like horizon blending, horizon position, relight scene, sky global. It looks like pretty similar to what is in the existing Luminar 4. And it looks like it still has some of the haloing problems that the existing version has, which is really unfortunate. I hope, Luminar, I hope or Skylum, if you see this review, I hope you can fix some of that before you release this, just because I've had to actually do exposure blending on images where I've taken and done the sky replacement on an image through Photoshop as a plugin, and then duplicated the layer and did a different version of of Luminar adjustments, and then masked out the parts of the sky that I didn't want over the subject, just because it wouldn't mask properly. So let's see, augmented sky AI. That's I think that's similar to what's in Luminar 4 right now. What I was telling you about that I don't really ever use, because it's got like fake moons and hot air balloons, and it's probably where these little flares are coming from, or maybe that's the atmosphere or sun rays. I don't know. Sun rays is already in Luminar 4, so it's probably not that. But I could see atmosphere being these little bokeh balls or whatever. Be guided, get inspired. Artificial intelligence is not just a catchphrase. Smart algorithms guide you and recommend the best outcomes when you need it, but the choice is always yours. With state-of-the-art templates, you can choose between different styles to get inspired to create your own. Not really any befores and afters here, but I guess what they're trying to show is... I'm not sure what they're trying to show here. We really kind of need befores and afters, I think, in order to really understand what the software is doing to some of these. Powerful doesn't mean complex. Okay. I'm going to stop everybody right here. That is true to a point. Well, let's finish what they say here. The actual power of Luminar AI is hidden under the hood. In fact, it's packed with incredible next-gen technologies which give you more capacity than any traditional editor. And they're using the Sky AI as the example here, which, I agree that blew my mind when I first saw it, because masking and doing sky replacements by hand is incredibly tedious and incredibly complex. And to be able to have this automated process that does it for me is fantastic. But powerful doesn't mean complex isn't always true. You need to be able to do things in a simple way, but you also need to have a way of overriding those simple directives when the situation calls for it. So in the instance of a person standing in this back up here, where it's a tall vertical person standing or it's actually here, let's do this one, where it's not masking properly, we need to be able to come in here and say, no, this is part of the background, this is not, this is part of the subject, this is not, and be able to define what those masks look like. The whole masking technology that Skylum has in Luminar 4, at least. I don't know about this version, but in Luminar 4, the masking is extremely naive and primitive. It's not precise at all. It's very it's very error prone. You can tell it's not designed for people to do really complex masks with it. Because if you have a soft brush or even a hard brush, a lot of times you are painting on the mask outside of where it's supposed to be painting on the mask. And, you know, feathering's great and all, but when you're trying to get some really precise masking so you can mask out a certain area or mask in a certain area, it needs to be precise. And, you know, for that reason, masking needs to come a long way before this is any kind of contender for something like Photoshop. Otherwise, it's a great tool for adding in with Photoshop, but you're going to be doing the majority of your masking inside Photoshop because that's just where the masking works. Let's see. Here it comes again. Revolutionary AI works magic on faces and body shapes, all ages, colors. Best part, you don't perform manual selections, masking, layering, and other tedious tasks of traditional photo editors. You know, when it works, great. When it doesn't work, you know, I mean, until they give us a way to really define what areas should be considered and which areas should not, we need to be able to define those things. Face AI, iris AI, body AI, all of these like atmospheric things here, these flares and rainbows, and God, we're gonna see a million of these on Instagram, aren't we? But you know, it's cute and childish, and it's going to be really popular for like 5 minutes, and then it's going to be gone. You know, no one's going to do this again. The first few people that post them out there are going to get a lot of attention, and then after that, it's going to go away. I mean, these types of little effects, I just don't see it. I don't see it happening. Let's see. Body AI, make bodies appear lighter or add weight. I think what they mean is thinner or heavier, because lighter or add weight. I mean, I suppose, yeah. I'm splitting hairs here, probably. Where needed for a realistic and stunning effect. Okay. And I will give Luminar this. A lot of their sliders, they're kind of foolproof. So often, there are exceptions, of course, but often a lot of the sliders won't let you overdo it. Like, you can go from nothing to maxed out on a particular slider, and oftentimes, you know, it's too much, but it's not like so too much that, you know, the picture's completely unusable for most things. It's hard to tell which of these were used for which photos. Iris AI, breathtaking eyes, natural sparks to bring the face to life. Face AI, improve faces naturally. Accent. Create landscapes so real you can feel the wind. So wow, number one. But this is already a fantastic image anyways. But wow, you know, it actually made it tons better. I'm kind of a little offended that there's a flock of birds that they added, but I wouldn't have known that they weren't there originally if I hadn't seen them before. So can I be offended? Probably not. You know, the original image was really great. I don't know why they wanted to completely redo this to something else. Interesting that they added this fog in here, which is kind of cool. And then the sun in the background there, that's cool. I don't know, there's a lot of really cool things going on in this photo, and I really love it. Let's take a look at this one here. You know, again, wow, you know. So structure AI, so there is a structure filter in Luminar 4, and that thing is just so heavy-handed. It's like a combination between a contrast slider and like a dehaze and a texture. I mean, it's kind of like sharpening a little bit, but it's extremely contrasty and very heavy. I typically find that I use it to lighten instead of like remove contrast instead of, you know, adding to it, just because it's so heavy-handed. They completely changed a lot of this, didn't they? Wow. Like this whole mountain is gone here. And over here, I think, yeah, over here too, these trees and these trees along here basically just gave it a flat meadow background. That's interesting. And also interesting is they did not replace the sky. If you look, that's the same sky background, but they've just relit it somehow. I would love to see how they did that. That's really cool. It was not a sky replacement. Let's look at this one. So Sky AI. This looks like a case where the masking actually worked. Yeah, it looks like the mask actually worked really well here. And one thing that Sky AI has that I really love is the ability to relight. And it says it right there, relight the entire photo so the colors of the original image shift to match the lighting and colors of your new sky. So typically you would use like a like a gradient fill, and you could like color map your colors that way, or you could use a color map too for that matter, but they will actually relight your photo to match the tones of the new sky that you're putting in, because what's in the sky has a drastic impact on what the light is in your photos. So because even the dark parts of the sky will contribute to the colors of like the shadows and so forth. So it's important to have that. Color harmony. So let's take a look here. That looks like that was a sky replacement. Yep, that's a sky replacement. And I do love how it's down in the water as well. That's very nice touch. I don't know if the AI sky replacement did that by itself, or if that had to be done by hand with layers or something, but good job. And I see the point here. The colors saturation is just really nice and evened out, and that's something also that Luminar 4 does a very good job with, but you have to know how to use the sliders. So typically for Luminar 4, drop down the saturation and then do color by manually. So that's a nice image though. All right, super contrast. Adding detail brings new depth to a photo. Precisely adjust tone with 6 controls spanning highlights, midtones, and shadows. So that little moon that you see up there in the sky, that's probably the AI augmented sky or whatever they're calling it. It works here. I would never know that was not part of the original photo, but I've seen some very obvious composites that were put together that with great big giant moons in them, and and Aurora Borealis in the background. It's like, come on, guys, keep it real. So 6 controls spanning highlights, midtones, and shadows. I think that's advanced contrast that they're talking about. At least in Luminar 4, it's on the advanced tab, and it's at the very top. And one of the things I really love is adjusting the highlight slider, because it will do almost like a almost simulate a little bit of a it almost kind of simulate like a polarized look on your highlights and kind of tame those down a little bit. So I really like using that, but I do not see how that set of controls would have resulted in this. That'll be interesting to see. And let's see, mood. Bring color to life with our mood tool. Experiment with color palettes to transform style and emotion of your image. You know, and again, this was already a really great photo. But you know what they did with it, dang, that's pretty awesome. Again, a flock of birds. I have a feeling we're gonna be seeing flocks of birds everywhere on like Instagram and so forth. They kept the original sky in here, which I definitely appreciate. You know, now knowing how easy it is to put in a new sky, times when I see them use the existing sky and just make the most of what they have in the photo, I really appreciate. You know, not just in, you know, these guys' work, but you know, online too. Just if it's the original sky and you can make it work, awesome. I think it's great that you don't have to replace the sky. And I like what it did here. I mean, it looks like there's some haze that was added, some atmosphere, some like fog coming up off the water. And just the color and the moods and so forth, just really nicely done, nicely balanced. Great composition from any angle. You'll always get the perfect crop with Composition AI. Smart engine blends the golden rules of composition plus the expertise of the world's best photographers. Excuse me? So, Composition AI. I almost a little insulted here. Just that. Let's see if there's any examples of this. No, that's done now. Yeah. So, does that mean that there's like no reason to like learn good composition anymore, or you know, frame your photos in a way that, you know, is meaningful and impactful to the viewer, that because you're gonna have some software come in and fix it all for you? I'm kind of offended by that, just a little bit. I think that might be kind of starting to cross the line. I think that if you are using it as a learning tool, where, you know, you can come in and say, you can have Luminar AI come in and say, oh, this particular image would look really good with this crop factor, and explain why. You know, because of this rule of thirds, and it puts your focus, your subject right here. But, you know, it comes back to this, this whole, how much is too much? How much can AI actually do for you? I mean, can it really tell that there is a human being in the photo that we want to be front and center, that we want to be the focus of the image? I mean, you could tell a lot of that by where the focus is, you know. But, you know, what if you have some kind of wonky focus thing where you've got some blades of grass in the foreground that you're focused on that, and that's where but you've got this person off to the side, you know, is it going to think that the person is the subject, or the sharpened blades of grass, is that the subject? Or, you know what I mean? There's a lot of room for error there, when talking about the rule of thirds. I mean, it's really easy when you're talking about a flat horizon in like an ocean scene or something like that. I mean, any new photographer could probably put a composition on that, put that at the rule of thirds. But, you know, there's plenty of times where you want to break the rules too. You know, maybe you don't want any of the sky in the photo because the sky is boring. Or, I mean, I suppose with Luminar AI, you don't need to have a boring sky. You can replace it, but the photos are your vision of what you want to create. And I kind of start to worry about software that will go and completely do everything for you. where the whole just snap the photo and we'll take care of the rest. Why? That's not fun. I mean, I guess not everybody enjoys editing photos like I do. And they're certainly not, maybe they're not very good at it, or they don't want to learn. They just want to take the photos. Kind of the same thing as, when you had the disposable cameras, right? You could just go and you snap, and throw it into a developing lab and wait for your photos to come back. You don't have to actually put in the time of developing them or doing something with them. It kind of this. I mean, I think if you did use something like this, like a composition AI, as a learning tool for how to better compose your shots, I think that could be very valuable. But I think it's going to be important for Skylum to actually have Luminar explain why that is a good composition and what makes it that way, and then give you the choice of either saying, yeah, you know what, you're right, I like that, or like, no, because that person that's in the photo is not my main focus. It's these blades of grass over here. You need to be able to, number one, override what those rules are, and number two, ideally, you shouldn't have to use this, right? You shouldn't have to use composition AI in order to crop your images. I mean, it's a creative choice for the artist. That's my 2 cents on that. Yes, it's that easy. It's actually not that easy. We've actually seen instances in these like images that they have on the website that show that it's not that easy, and there are some pitfalls to doing some of these things. But that said, I am very blown away by a lot of the stuff I've seen. Pre-order at a special price, and the price that they have on here is $59, down from $79, so you save $20. I think you might need to. So I had to put in the when I bought it, I had to put in the serial number or my email address to prove that I had Luminar 4 previously. So I'm not sure if this discount is for everybody, but it's worth it to me. To sum things up, despite me pointing out all the pitfalls of this and nitpicking it to death, I am a huge Luminar fan. I think Luminar has some of the most compelling products right now for photographers. I don't think it's an end-to-end solution by any means, or a stretch of the imagination. I personally use Luminar 4 as a plugin for Photoshop. I think it excels as that. And the reason why is because there's a lot of pitfalls that, it's just not a mature product in a lot of areas. And I'm a little disappointed to find out that they've rushed off and done a new version of the software without first addressing some of the core problems that they had with this. I mean, I did report back to them a list of features that I thought would be beneficial for them to have in the next version or in an update of the Luminar 4 version. And I was pleased to see that one of them was addressed with the preview of the sky replacement images in the UI. So you can see what the skies are without having to apply to the entire photo. That right there, huge, because now I can start using my skies again. And I can actually see all of my skies instead of, picking one at a time and hoping I don't miss one. There was actually a case where I had 2 images, the very similar images, and I did a sky replacement on one, and then I went to go do the sky replacement on the second image, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find the sky I used in the first image, and it took me forever because I couldn't do a different sky on the second photo. Everybody would know it was a sky replacement. I had to use the same sky in both images because it was the same subject, the same time it was shot. And so the skies had to be the same. And I couldn't find the stupid sky because there was no way to see all of the skies at one time. So seeing that they did that, very pleased. I'm very happy about that. But, you know, some of the other things I wish that they had addressed first were like the masking. It's if they want anybody to really take Luminar seriously, as you know, for professionals at least, you know, if they want us to take Luminar seriously, there has to be a way for us to do complex masking in a precise and easy manner. I use a Wacom tablet for drawing masks. There is no Wacom support whatsoever in their masking. I can increase and decrease the size of the brush, but I cannot adjust the feather. I cannot adjust the flow. I cannot switch between drawing in and erasing. I can't do that at all. You know, I have to, you know, go up to the interface and click on those things, and all they have to do is mask them to a keyboard shortcut or something, and boom, done. I can mask that. I can map that on my Wacom tablet, and you know, make editing a lot easier. And they need to make masking more precise. And so there's things like that that I wish they would have addressed first before going and saying, oh, we're going to spend all of this time investing in all of this AI stuff. I get it's a buzzword. I get it's the, you know, maybe they have adjusted the masking. I don't know. Maybe the masking is better. I haven't seen the product yet. But the masking issue with the sky replacement still there, where, you know, there's a haloing around the subject. That's really disappointing because I've seen lots of users complain about that on their discussion boards. It's something they know is there and they haven't fixed it yet. So that's a little bothersome. But overall, you know, I think that you could do a lot of really great things with the software, and its strengths definitely make it worth getting. But I think it's important to know what you're getting it for, what you plan to use it for, and you know, use the tools that it gives you to accomplish your goals as an artist, to make the very best images that you possibly can. And for me, that's using it in Photoshop as a smart object filter. It works really great for me. And you know, for the few things that it can't do, you know, like correctly masking out skies, you know, I got workarounds in Photoshop I can do. It's frustrating. It's really frustrating that, you know, I have to do it. But at the same time, what I'm getting from them with sky replacement is worth it, because it would have taken me tons time longer to mask out a sky. Not to mention to do the color grading on the rest of the image to help match that sky. So I love the software. I think it's got a long ways to go before it's a fully grown with big boy britches kind of software product for professional use only. But what do you think? I mean, have you used Luminar? You think you might? Are you interested in possibly purchasing this version? What do you think about this version? Do you think that this version is better than the last one, or is it kind of going in the direction that's not interesting to you, or isn't going to benefit you at all? I already alluded earlier, I bought my copy, so I'm going to find out when it gets released, and I'll share that review with you guys when I see it. And I don't normally do these sort of reviews, but if you liked it, you know, give me a thumbs up, and you know, let me know in the comments, and I'll happily do some more. I'm not an expert on all things, but you know, some things, you know, I use Luminar, so I kind of feel like I, you know, can contribute to the conversation a little bit. So yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. Hit the like button, subscribe to my videos if you like the content that you're seeing, and you know, ring the bell so you get notified when I put out new content. So that's all I had for you guys today, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.